It all started with the DM.
And what was that DM, my dearest partner in greatness?
It was Macbeth's DM to Lady Macbeth through his letter in Act 1, Scene 5. And actually, this was the question that appeared in the 2017 GCSE exam paper, okay? So this was the 2017 paper, which looked at the letter that Lady Macbeth received from Macbeth. Now, what I wanted us to do in this special GCSE revision prediction class is to go over all 6 questions that appeared for Macbeth in the past paper exams, and also make our predictions on what we think is going to come up in the 2023 GCSE exams. So, Mr. Salles.
Brilliant. So first, a warning about predictions, okay? We are just making our best educated guesses. That's why we make this video quite late on, so that you will have revised everything, but we're just saying we think on balance this might be more valuable than other stuff, because we hope these are going to come up.
Now, what I want us to do is actually firstly begin, before we go into what I think is our respective predictions, actually going over all 6 past paper questions that came up in the past exams, looking at maybe trends, but also based on these trends predicting what might come up in this exam. So let's begin. Now, this was the question that came up in the 2017 exam. This is where you had an extract from Lady Macbeth where she was reading the letter from Macbeth, and were asked to discuss how ambition was presented. Now, what was interesting about the 2017 exam is that it was a theme-related question as opposed to a character-related question. Now, what came up in the 2018 exam?
So the 2018 was Macbeth and Banquo, but it was also the supernatural. So my top tip to you is when you do get a character question, think, what theme can I bring to that? Because that's where the higher marks are. When you're discussing those themes, attach them to the character question if you get one.
Now, in 2019, we had a character-related question. We had the captain who was describing how Macbeth was fighting quite valiantly in the battlefield. And the question was related to how was Macbeth presented as a violent character? And this is taken from Act 1, Scene 2. So what's really interesting from what I can see here is that we have a theme that started off in 2017, but then it started being really focused on characters.
Yes. I think AQA tried to do that because this was the first year of the exam, and they actually tried to make the exams easier and easier every year, something that drives me nuts. And that's why there are so many character questions.
Now, in the 2020 exam, we actually had yet another character question, but in this case, it was a Lady Macbeth character focused question. And actually what was really interesting about this exam is that we had a statement. The statement was, Lady Macbeth is a female character that changes. Do you agree or disagree? And you had to discuss Lady Macbeth based on the extract you were given in Act 5, Scene 1, which is where she goes basically crazy, and you wanted to juxtapose that with how she was presented earlier on. Now, what came up in the 2021 exam?
So this was my favourite question, the relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. I have a particular take on that. I actually think that they are perfect partners and deeply in love, not something that most English teachers teach. But this is a really great one if that comes up, because if you revise both characters, you also pretty much revise every theme.
Now, the question that came up last year, so this is Year 11's last year who are in your position this year, is how Macbeth's fears were presented. And the extract that you were presented with is when he is contemplating killing Banquo. He's thinking about the witch's prophecies relating to Banquo's character and how his children will be kings, and he is considering how not only will he be usurped as a king, but also he's thinking about how he can change the royal lineage, okay? So he's trying to still overcome divine right. Now, based on these questions, what do you kind of think is really interesting when we're considering trends, but of course also looking to the future with the upcoming exams?
So we're looking at a lot of character questions that have come up recently. So my top prediction is we're going to get a theme one. Traditionally, the top theme in Macbeth has been the supernatural, and the second most popular theme is ambition. So I'm taking the risk on the supernatural. That's going to be my favourite theme to come up.
Well, I think actually, I personally would argue that Lady Macbeth, the last time she was actually questioned, or rather the last time we were asked to focus on Lady Macbeth, was 2 years ago in 2020. I personally think she's a really key contender because I think that we're going to get yet another character question. Now, last year I made the prediction that the witches or the supernatural would come up, But actually, based on what I can see here with the Macbeth questions, AQA tends to really focus on just the two main characters. So I personally think that given the last 2 years, we had Macbeth included, so Macbeth was last year, and the previous year before that, we had Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. I think you can either get a Lady Macbeth question, so it's really important to be very familiar with her, or perhaps a Lady Macbeth question combined with either guilt, right, so how she changes, how her supernatural hallucination illustrates her guilt, or a Lady Macbeth question purely tied to the supernatural, how she was the fourth witch, and maybe you can also make an extension in terms of considering how also the witches are presented. So that's really it when it comes to predictions.
Yeah.
And what can students do kind of in the run-up? So what can they maybe do and consider as a last-minute kind of broach for their exam?
Yeah, so my top tips are do a plan for both essays. So do a plan for the Lady Macbeth and the supernatural one. Plan out 8 key moments in the play that you're going to go through. Plan them chronologically because then you can show you're dealing with the full text. Always look at the end of the character. So if it's Lady Macbeth, not just her choice of suicide, but how Macbeth reacts to it and how she's described as a fiend-like queen at the end. Because when you discuss the ending of a character, you're sending a signal to the examiner that you considered the whole text and you've got a conceptualised argument, which is right at the top of the mark scheme. The other thing I do is memorise those 8 quotations for your 8 key moments in the play. Each key moment is going to be a separate paragraph. It doesn't matter how long those are, but as long as you're charting the development of the character or theme over 8 paragraphs, you're easily going to get top grades.
Thank you. It all started with a DM.
And what was that DM, my dearest partner and greatest first-rate tutor?
Can we try that one last time?
If you're studying A Christmas Carol, you are going to want to watch the next instalment with First Rate Tutors. We discuss all the past paper questions, how you might approach them if any of those come up, and of course, we both make our predictions. That video is coming up now.